Alright, like, click, subscribe, do all that. You already know what time it is. It's Netflix time. This movie's called Deadly Illusions. After a best-selling novelist suffering from writer's block hires a new nanny for her children, the line between friction and reality starts to blur. So it just came out. It's an hour and 54 minutes long. It's a psychological thriller. My personal favorites. I'm so giddy. Letting you know up front, spoiler alert, I'm giving it all away right now. I'm begging you right now, if you haven't seen this movie first, go watch it. Do not watch this review. Go watch the movie. It's freaking awesome. And then you come back and watch this and hear me go insane off of this mayhem. So we got Mary and her husband Tom. They got 2 kids. You remember Kristen Davis, the best looking one from Sex and the City. So you got these 2 people that come to her house, and she's thinking this meeting is about house renovations and stuff. But it turns out they actually want her to publish another book. Okay, so Mary has written about 8 books, and considering the offer they give her, I'm thinking she's pretty well established. Yeah, they offered her about $2 million to do a 9th book. But she doesn't want to write the book because it takes her to a dark place or whatever, so they end up kicking her out the house. I mean, she kicks them out after declining the offer. Regardless, they still left the papers there. You know, just in case she changed her mind. Later on, Tom finds the papers and he's like, you know, we should really consider this. And she's like, well, why should I? And he says he messed up on some inequity plan that he messed up on back about 6 months ago that she didn't know about. And she's like, well, what the fuck? So she goes to the spa and relax. Wait a minute, is that my boo Shanola Hampton? Yeah, my girl V from Shameless. Which is on Netflix right now. They got all 10 seasons and I've seen them all, yes indeedy. So Elaine gives Mary a Huntsman Enterprises card for childcare services. Basically to hire a babysitter. Which she goes to right after her spa. A bunch of candidates come through for the position, and she's like, they cool, but nah. And then we get this one lady here by the name of Grace who's reading a book as she's coming in. So what we're told right off the back is she reads a lot of profound books but does not know who Mary is. As she's walking around the house, she checks out her collection of books. See? 8. There you go. Grace picks up one of the books and opens it and realizes Mary is actually an author. So you're going to tell me all the books that she reads, all the books she sees in the house, and she didn't know Mary was an author? Okay, let's roll with that. So anyway, because of that, Mary picks her to be the full-time babysitter. Everything goes great with the kids. My boo Elaine's all skeptical and shit. Elaine's like, you can't be having no cute babysitter around Tom. You know the game, you know the rules. But Mary ain't trying to hear none of that shit as she fits Grace into a bathing suit. Grace meets Tom for the first time. You already know what that look mean, being extra. Later on, they make a dinner. Grace watching the kids in the living room. They go in the back room, make it do what it do. Yeah, you know what to do. Sex in the City, don't ever forget that. After like 5 minutes, they come back out. Grace gets the kids ready for bed. They ask her to stay for dinner, but she doesn't want to intrude, and then she ends up leaving. So at this point, she seems like the perfect babysitter, right? Next day, she comes by and fixes Mary breakfast. Mary was going to the bath and she cut herself. She puts a band-aid on her foot. She's more like a maid than a babysitter, huh? Mary decides to take her shopping. Grace says it's too much, but Mary's like, it's no problem at all. They go bra shopping and all that. What is going on with the hand there, though? Okay, alright, I see. Back at home with her husband, spending quality time and whatnot. She asks him about plastic surgery and all that. He's like, man, I'm in love with your mind. You don't need to do nothing wrong with your body. Everything about your body's great. But the only reason she even got that idea was about how young Grace looked and all that. Tom reassures Mary everything's all good and gravy. Next day, Mary starts smoking a cigar, just walking around her own backyard, and she just starts staring at Grace through the window. Not sure what's going through her mind, probably ain't nothing serious though. So later on, she actually meets up with these people about a meaning for the book, and she wants to know what's it was supposed to be about. So the twist is you have a hero in the book, and the twist is supposed to be towards the end, they suddenly become the villain or anti-hero. She's like, man, if you don't get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. While they're talking, she starts dreaming about Grace all of a sudden. I'm like, alright, Mary, if that's what you want to spend your time thinking about, sure. Afterwards, she goes to the gym to work out with Elaine, and anytime we get to look at Elaine, it's always a beautiful thing. So Mary's talking to Elaine about having writer's block. She's trying to get rid of it, and she's thinking to herself, Grace might be the cure for it. So after a workout, she's like, man, Tom, what's good? Yo? You know what time it is. Time to get it in. But then he reminds her about the banquet they're supposed to go to tonight, and she's like, oh, I completely forgot. So as she's getting ready, she asks Grace, can she spend some extra hours of the night until they come back? She's like, all right, no problem. So they really appreciate Grace at this point. So much so that Tom wants her to actually be a part of the family. She doesn't really have any objections to it, but she doesn't really approve it either. Meanwhile, they go to the dinner, and like I said, anytime we get to look at her on screen, it's divine brilliance. So it's Tom and Elena go out to dance. So this guy, like everybody else in their world, loves her 4th book, you know what I'm saying? Which happened to be a bestseller, but the thing is, she was in a dark place in her time when she wrote that book, and she really doesn't want to go back to that. But she is going to concede, and she will write another book. Next day, Mary has Grace come over and rub lotion on her back. She goes skinny dipping and tell Grace to come on in, which Grace does, but in her bathing suit. Later on, they're just chilling on the couch. She talks about how much she loves having her there. Grace breaks down and says she's never been more part of a family in her entire life. And then she consoles her. Then she had a dream that Grace was going downtown on the box. Question is, was it a dream or did it really happen? But when she woke up, she was the only one on the couch. After that, they go to the kids' concert. Grace takes pictures. They ask her to be in one of the pictures. Then Mary pulls Grace to the side for a minute. Mary says whatever happened on the couch can't happen again. Grace is looking at her like, what the fuck are you talking about? Mary like nothing, don't even worry about it. Back at home, Grace sets up a bubble bath for Mary, pouring in milk, Epsom salt, and flower petals, feeding her stuff, massaging her temples. What are you now, masseuse too? Then she starts massaging other erotic spots. Now I was wondering if she was dreaming again, but I don't think she is this time. And because of her, it's really giving her the inspiration to write again. Apparently that's all it took to cure her writer's block, and because Mary's so busy, Tom takes Grace out to get something to eat. They drop the kids off and they get something to eat. Elaine, why you being nosy? You meddling in married people's business? I know it's your best friend, but you gotta fall back on that one. You can meddle in my business all day, I don't even care. Alright, enough of my fandom. Well, anyway, at the table, she orders a quiche and a Bloody Mary. And Tom's like, oh, I've never seen this side of you before. What side? All she did was order a drink. Well, anyway, he drives her back home, nothing happens. Well, apparently we're skipping ahead because 3 weeks later, Mary and Grace go bike riding. They go to this random spot where Mary starts reading out poems. And Grace leads in for the kiss all of a sudden. Mary didn't object, so apparently she does know what she's been doing. And then she's like, look, we can't do anything. Like, don't get it wrong. It's you. You're perfect in every way and all that. So as they're getting their bikes, one of the tires got slashed. And they're like, what the heck? What happened? Nobody was out there but them two. Somebody slashed the tires. They tried calling Tom, but Tom didn't pick up the phone, so they made it back on foot. Meanwhile, Tom was at the house with Elaine. What the heck is going on here? So while Elaine is trying to figure out information on Grace, Mary is looking at Elaine indirectly like, what the fuck? She's like, well, what were you doing over here? And the whole time I've been trying to call him, he hasn't picked up the phone to pick us up. It's like, what's the deal? She says the whole time they were talking about Mary, and she says to come meet her somewhere so they can get some privacy, because clearly they don't want Grace to hear what she has to say. So what happened, Elaine? You found out some information on Grace? What's really good? So anyway, they go back in the house to cook dinner. Then she starts playing with the kitty cat in the kitchen again. But before she can finish, everybody came back in the house. So she tells Tom she got a headache, she about to go lie down. Okay, this is the part where I think she's hallucinating. As she's laying down, she hears noises, so she gets back up. She looks in the kitchen and sees Tom blindfolded doing things to Grace. Like, really, that's what we doing? Alright, I know she's hallucinating. For one, why would she do that in the kitchen if she knows she's in another room? Two, where did that dress come from? She didn't have that on at first. Next thing you know, she wakes back up out of bed again. She comes back to the kitchen. As you can see, she has the same thing she had on. She starts accusing Grace of messing with Tom and all these other accusations. Tom's like, hey, is the stress of the book getting to you again? Like, what are you talking about? Back in the room, she's talking about she don't know what's real and what's not. She doesn't take any medication or anything, so I'm like, okay, it can't be that. So I'm thinking something happened in her past or something. But then he comes in and says he's sorry he messed up. Messed up for what? What are we talking about? And they never expound on it. I mean, is he sorry he messed up for her having to write the book in the first place? Or I mean, like, what's the deal? Alright, let's get to some good shit. So she wakes up at like 1 o'clock in the morning, starts walking around the balcony and all that, goes through the study halls, and she's thinking about mountains and waterfalls. Next thing we know, she wakes up ready to celebrate their anniversary, but he's got to get some stuff done at the office for today real quick. So she calls the directory to make sure somebody gets a check, and then she hadn't heard anything back yet. They're like, for who? She's like, under Grace. They're like, yeah, we still got the check here. So as they're checking, they don't even have a Grace in their directory. So she's like, the fuck is going on? She tries calling Elaine, but she's not picking up the phone. So she goes to her office to see her. Unfortunately, when she gets there, Elaine's dead as shit. She's got scissors in her fucking neck. They killed up my boo. It's so sad. Well, anyway, after she calls the police, they like, we gotta come down the station and ask some questions. But when they get to the station, they start interrogating her. They say her fingerprints was on the scissors, they said it was a note there, and all this other shit. They even showed a video of somebody walking there late at night. At around 2 in the morning. Now, her husband comes there and saves her. He's like, look, we don't believe you did none of that shit. Like, cut it out, though. He's like, they can't tie you to any scissors because we all touch the scissors. But he says she didn't come back to bed for another 3 hours. Keep in mind, she had woke up out of bed like 1 in the morning. That video recording was at 2, so she wouldn't have got back into the bed till about 4. So is that face clear enough to see who really did it? Now, because she's been hallucinating so much, we're not really sure if she really did it or if Grace really did it. But I feel like Grace would if she found that Elaine was digging up any information on her. Well, anyway, she looked in the directory and found her aunt's house. It drove 2 hours to get there. She talks about how Grace grew up in a household of 8 and she was always brutalized and beaten by her parents. I don't know if she's thinking it, but we start seeing these scenarios. We see how Grace was at the spa even before they met. Unknowingly to them, Grace had took a picture of the card that was laying there on the table. They really didn't have any applicants at the time to work for the Huntsman group, but when the lady had to use the bathroom, she took down Mary's information off of the books. So that's how they was able to contact her after all the applicants went through. So while Mary's still on the road, Tom's about to take a shower. The kids are in their room. Grace come popping up with some skid tie finals and a whip on some Nicole Kidman shit. But she also has a knife in her hand. So apparently, she switched it to her alter ego, Margaret. So she's bipolar. One is Grace and the other is Margaret. She cut up Mark and left him a bloody mess. I mean, Tom. Mary finally gets back home. She snaps back into Grace and is like, oh my god, somebody call the ambulance, call 911, Tom's hurt. She gets in there and sees Tom all fucked up. Then she turns into Margaret again. Oh shit. They rustling, tussling, getting into the beef. So as Mary gets tossed to the ground, Grace is battling with her alter ego, Margaret. And before she chokes her to death, she smashes Grace's head with a fucking vase. 1 year later, the family's all good. Mary sends flowers to Elaine's grave and she finished up a book made entitled for her. Then she goes to this hospital and visits Grace. What the fuck? Okay, number one, bipolar or not, this bitch still killed your best friend. Number two, how is she still there? This hospital looks easy as fuck to get out of. Why would you still be friends with this bitch? How could you still be friends with this bitch? Unless Elaine wasn't your friend like that. But no, she was your friend like that because you dedicated a whole book to her. You know what? Daily Illusions on Netflix. Check it out. Like, click, subscribe, do all that. You already know what time it is. Slick, DZ, all the easy. Mr. Big, cute goddamn slogan.